Why are we always looking for something better? And why don't we identify the something better that's sitting right in front of us, available? There is something about human nature that makes us always think we want the other guy's thing, or we want the next prize, or the next house, or the next. I think it takes real maturity, something, compassion, and time probably to understand that often what's better, we're already holding in our hands.
Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, the show where I virtually invite people into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we are chatting with the author, Dianne Parrish. She's the author of Something Better. And I will say that this book, I've never wanted a book to have a sequel more than this book right here. Because there was so much at the end. I'm like, really? I'm like, there better be a sequel to this book. But before we get into your book, Diane, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me on your blogcast. It's really fun. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see, about me. I have lived a lot of different places. I grew up mainly in the Midwest. I lived in Kansas, Missouri, North Dakota. As an adult, I lived in Switzerland for a while, and then we moved to Connecticut, where I live now. I've also had a number of different careers, which basically have nothing whatsoever to do with each other. But now I can look back and see, oh, this was all leading to the same place. I've been a dental hygienist, I've been a litigation attorney, and now I'm a writer. And I'm finding I use all of that in my fiction.
Wow, dental hygienist, an attorney, and a writer. Now, the attorney and the writer I can see, but the dental hygienist, how do you pull that into your writing?
The way I pull it into my writing is being a dental hygienist is like you and I having a real conversation. Being a dental hygienist that's a real job. You meet real people every hour. You see a different patient. You get to know people really well. You're not sitting in an office. You're not just moving papers around. You're really with people one-on-one, and you get to know a lot about people. You get to know what they care about. You get to know what matters to them. Because it's a dental office, you get to see them under a lot of stress sometimes, which comes into the writing. And also because I was a dental hygienist in the Midwest, I got to know that part of the country really well during that period of time.
Wow. So did any of the stories that you maybe heard from your patients, did it make it into the book?
There's one I haven't put into a book yet, but it is 100% going into a book. But I can't say yet because I'm writing it. Yes, we've had, oh yes, my goodness. Well, one of the most exciting for us, I was young when I had this job. One of the most exciting parts of the job was we provided free dental care to the University of Kansas basketball team. I know that might not go down well in North Carolina, but anyway, we did. It was so fun to meet those guys, you know, all walks of life, all very appreciative of what was happening, and all way too long for the chairs, their feet and their head. So we had to accommodate these really, really tall guys in our office. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. That would be really cool to see it. And to see now, did any of them become famous?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't think which particular ones when I was there, but you know, every year, like with the North Carolina teams, every year, one or two of them get picked to go to the NBA. So you get to see them on television. And, you know, it's been a long time now, but in those days I could say, I cleaned his teeth.
Yeah, I think my oldest sister's one claim to fame was she went to Carolina. She was like a junior or senior when Michael Jordan was at Carolina, but he was a freshman, and she got on the elevator with him. So that was her big claim to fame, that she was on the elevator with Michael Jordan and Sam Perkins.
Gosh, that is pretty exciting. I would be telling people that too.
Yeah. So let's talk about what led you to go down the writing journey then to become a writer.
Actually, I've always wanted to write, and I always have written. From the time I was a little kid, I'd write my own stories. I even made up stories that I kind of believed while I was making them up. Apparently, I had an imaginary friend when I was a really little child, and I insisted that she have a place at the table and that she was sleeping in the bed with me and she was playing with my toys. And my parents very kindly went along with this. They encouraged me to have a vivid imagination. So I started writing down stories from the time I was a kid. And then I took some writing classes in between. I practiced dental hygiene for a couple of years before I went back to law school. So during that period of time, I also took some writing classes. So I wrote some stories, and I'd always written, but I never told anyone that I was doing this. I wasn't sure I wanted anyone to read my work, and I wasn't sure I wanted to let anybody know I had such a crazy idea in the back of my mind. So for this book, I wrote it in bits and pieces over 10 years probably, with no one knowing. I kept all my writing in a file on my computer that I labeled miscellaneous beet recipes. If a meteor hit me, nobody was going to open that miscellaneous beets recipe on my I would never have to share that I was doing this writing on the QT.
Oh, wow, I love that miscellaneous beet recipes. What a
Mhm.
way! What a great story. Now, you said you were a lawyer, and Annabeth, and not Annabeth. Annabeth is the other person in the
Right,
story is a
right.
lawyer as well. How much of your law did you pour into her?
Well, it was definitely baked into her story. I was not the type of lawyer that she is. She's basically a property law contracts lawyer. I was a litigation attorney. I did defense work for product manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and doctors. So that part of it was different. But the pressure to please a client and the travel that was involved and the sense of responsibility towards the law firm was a part of it. That was all very much a part of it. And so I picked up on that and used that in describing how Ruth went about her day to day. I updated it because when I practiced law, we didn't have to worry about um, electronic communications. So that was a whole new thing. And that's it is a big worry. I mean, I can't even imagine, next year we're all going to be writing about AI. But anyway, um, electronic communications needed to factor into her work. So I added that piece. But yeah, a lot of what she did is very similar to what I did.
I love that. Now, what made you decide to write this book and write this book in such a way that readers are like, they're riveted, like they're turning the pages and they're reading it, and then they get to the end and they're like, come on, man, that's not how it ended.
Well, okay. So why I wrote the book. Of course, the primary theme of the book is forgiveness. And I wrote the book because I really wanted to explore that notion of forgiveness when it happens and when it doesn't happen. And the more I thought about it, I spent a lot of time reading books about forgiveness. I took a class on forgiveness. I was just forgiveness all the time. But the more I learned about it, the more I kept thinking the only way to tell about how forgiveness works is in a story. You can write an essay about forgiveness, but it just kept feeling to me like it needed to be a part of a story. And I had observed, coincidentally, but I had observed just about the time I started to write this book, an opportunity where two people wronged each other and forgave each other, and an incident in my own family where they did not forgive each other, and one of the people died. And it was so compelling to me. I just couldn't, well, I did eventually come to a conclusion, but I kept thinking, why was this possible? And this was not possible. And I wanted to understand that. And I wanted to imagine a world where forgiveness was extended in a lot of different ways towards oneself, towards someone else, asking for forgiveness, rejecting forgiveness, having the patience to wait for forgiveness, praying for forgiveness, making it a part of your faith journey. I wanted to just come at it from every angle. So I tried to do that.
Yeah, and I think you did a really good job on it too. I
Mhm.
mean, because the couple Ruth and David are a couple that they're normal everyday people, basically, and the things that they run into in their life, it's like a mind blowing that they were able to. I'm not going to give away the end of the book,
Right.
but the whole theme of the book is like forgiveness, but it's not. Sometimes forgiveness is not wrapped up in a nice little package with a nice little bow on top. So
You
I
have
love that.
just, yes, exactly. And that was one of the things I wanted to accomplish in the book as well. I didn't want to tie it in a bow. I didn't want to have it be, neon lights shining down. Oh, look, this is the moment when they forgive each other. Because that does happen. I mean, lightning strikes, people do forgive each other that way. But more often, when I've experienced it on one side or the other, and when I've observed it, it's a process, it takes a while. I read a quote, I think it was C.S. Lewis said, I work very hard at forgiving someone and I accomplish it on a Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I find I have to do it all over again.
I think we all struggle with that. I think we say we forgive somebody, but something can happen and like that little jerk, and you're right back where you started again.
Oh
You
my
got to
gosh.
start the whole thing all over again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I've also had it's somewhat similar, but a different experience where I didn't think about forgiving the person. I just pushed it out of my mind and because it was painful to really go over that and over that. And I sort of let time do its work.
Yeah.
I had a very specific, and I hadn't seen this person for a long time. I had thought about the harm. And then I found out that I was going to encounter this person in real life in a pretty intimate setting. And I kind of panicked and thought, oh my gosh, what's that going to be like?
Mhm.
And when I saw her, I thought, I'm, it's over. I've forgiven her. I don't feel anything about being in this room with her. And I was completely shocked, to be honest.
Sometimes time's a great thing, but sometimes we hold on to that forgiveness. I read somewhere, I think it was a Wendy Blythe book, whereas forgiveness is like the tentacles of an octopus, that the more we don't forgive, the more the tentacles come around our heart and just make us so bitter. So why did you decide to show the redemption of forgiveness in this book? Because a lot of people, they don't want to forgive. They forgive, but they don't forget. And then they end up, because they don't forget about what's happening, they end up holding harsh resentments.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And very similar to the octopus analogy, which I like a lot, is I think Annie Lamott says it's like not forgiving is like taking rat poison and waiting for the rat to die. Holding on to a grudge, holding on to bitterness and animosity is so detrimental to the person who's holding on to it. The person you're so upset with might not even know you care at all. They're off doing their own thing. They're free as little birds. And you're in the meantime just stabbing yourself over and over again. So I thought that was really I thought it was important to highlight that. And I thought I read a lot of contemporary fiction. And one of the things I wanted to include in this book was at least one character who had a belief, because there aren't very many characters in contemporary fiction right now who do. And if they do pop up, oftentimes they're frankly kind of weird. When you encounter one, you're sort of like, okay, wait a minute, I think I know what's going to happen here. You're going to be this other kind of person. And I just wanted it, like you said, I just wanted Ruth and David to be everyday people. And they come about life from a slightly different perspective. They come about faith from a slightly different perspective. And I just wanted to present it could be like this.
Yeah, there was one character in the story that I just wanted to punch so bad, and that was the aunt. That was the aunt. I wanted to punch her so bad. I'm like, why is she coming in and taking over everything? Why did you put her in the book?
Well, the quick answer is all the characters are invented except Aunt Janet.
Interesting.
Well, I've exaggerated it, of course, but I had someone very similar to Aunt Janet who was an aunt in my life. And, she's a force of nature. Oh my gosh, she just always just took over and ran everything and scared the living daylights out of me as a kid. But as I got older, when I really needed someone because of a crisis in my own life, she just stepped right in. Oh, I'm going to get a little teary now. Oh dear, I'm surprised. Anyway, she just stepped right in. And I realized what she was showing the world about who she was a hard shell. She didn't want us to see that underneath there, she cared and she would do all kinds of nice things for all kinds of people. So because of my growth and better understanding of who she was, I mean, for one thing, she's a kick. She just brings a lot of personality to every situation. But I wanted to include an opportunity for my revelation about her to become a part of Annabeth's story too. So
Yes.
that's why she's there.
Yeah, for sure. We need to take a brief commercial break, but we will be right back. And you're going to read part of your book when you come back.
Okay, thank you.
The threats women face today are unparalleled and even more dangerous than ever before. 1 in 3 women globally has been the victim of an assault. Women are terrified and they are looking for answers.
In the book, Street Smart Safety for Women, we draw on our experiences, both personal and professional, to provide those answers. It's by women, for women. Street Smart Safety for Women is available wherever books are sold.
In a world full of chaos, she chose to anchor her story in hope. Through storms and silence, she found strength. And now, she's inviting you to do the same. This isn't just a book, it's a lifeline. For every woman who's ever felt unseen, your healing begins here. Anchored in Hope, available now.
And we are back with Dianne Parrish, who's the author of Something Better, and she's going to read part of her book for you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to read the very beginning of the book. We won't have to worry about spoilers, although there is some foreshadowing in here, so people will get a hint about what's to come. Before February 2009, the house sits inside a snow globe. The man and woman catch glimpses through the swirling flakes of the party glittering within, a scene of warmth and light and laughter, confirmation they'd been right to risk the storm. They pick their way along the ice-covered walk toward the front door. She clutches his arm until he can guide her safely into the welcoming embrace of their hosts. The door closes behind them, and the storm ceases to exist. This is a real party, not some faculty chips and beer affair. There are bartenders and servers, past canapes, drinks in crystal glasses. Somewhere a piano plays. The guests are well dressed, preparing to make a night of it because it's beastly out there, and in here is all they need. He gravitates toward a lively group of fellow professors by the fire. She wanders until she reaches the library where a handful of guests are quietly chatting from the comfort of large leather chairs. They've found their people. Whenever he replenishes his drink or revisits the buffet, he peeks into the room where she sits, lifting his glass or raising his eyebrows. She smiles, nods yes or no. He sees to her, then moves on to charm another group. They roar at his stories, beg him for more. By night's end, he will have collected a dozen new acquaintances, and she will have made a new friend. A perfect evening. When it starts to get late, she finds him, catches his eye, and touches the watch on her wrist. She stands by the door, waits for him to shake hands with every lingering guest. By midnight, they're the last ones in the foyer. It's all, thank you, goodbye, maybe you should stay, it's so awful out there. No, we'll be okay. Stepping into a furious wind, she asks if she should drive, but he assures her he's fine. He fires up the heater, scrapes the windows, then takes the driver's seat, full of news to share about his version of the night. Of course, I'll be careful, but listen to this. At first, he seems up to the task. Not too fast, she reminds him. For the most part, he keeps his eyes on the road, and they skid just a little now and then. But on this winter night, the wind is fierce, the road is winding, and the driver is distracted. He's still talking and gesturing when they begin to slide sideways downhill. Only when the car starts to spin does silence descend and the laws of physics have their way. The car whirls in wider and wilder accelerating spirals until it leaves the road, careens through the woods, and smashes headfirst into a tree. Snow falls all night, obscuring their tracks in the trail of broken limbs. It isn't until the next afternoon that a beam of sunlight, glinting off a window, catches the eye of the snowplow driver passing by. The location of the car makes retrieval difficult. The passage of many hours renders rescue impossible. The plow driver keeps vigil until the police arrive, then resumes his route and makes his way home to his wife. He walks in the door and describes what he's seen. Who? How? She asks, what if you hadn't happened by? He asks, but what if I'd been there sooner?
Wow. You said it took you 10 years to write this novel.
Yeah.
So why did it take you, first of all, why did it take you 10 years? And second of all, why did you decide to get it published?
Okay, it took 10 years for actually many reasons. One of them being I was also very busy. I was doing a lot of other things and I was kind of squeezing this into my off hours. and I'd write for a while, and then I'd think, oh, you're never going to finish this. Just put this away and go back to doing what you really do, and forget about it. But then they would be calling me. These people would be calling me, and I'd sit down and start writing it again. It also took a long time because I had a lot of profound insecurity about it. I didn't think I could actually finish it. I didn't think it would be that good. I didn't know if I would ever want to show it to anyone. And so self-doubt just kept me stuck in a place of fear, actually. It was a place of fear. But when the pandemic came and we all had to just stay home, I thought to myself, you're kind of out of excuses. All your meetings are canceled. You're not going here. You're not going there. If you're ever going to finish this thing, you need to finish this thing. So I did. I finished the draft, and I showed it to two people. I showed it to a friend who's a writer, and I showed it to my daughter who's a writer. And I picked those two people because I knew that they would be kind and honest. And that's what I wanted. And both of them, thankfully, were very encouraging and said, no, this needs to be in the world. You need to do this. So the story of my getting the book published had a lot of heartbreak. I had a publisher, and then that publisher went out of business. So I had to pull the book back, start all over again. And I ended up getting it published with the people who I'd originally hired to help me promote the book when it was with the other publisher. It was a lot of back and forth and a lot of pain, which happens, at the time. This is another good lesson, I think, for me. At the time, I was so heartbroken, and I thought, how can this be? I've worked so hard, and my dream was coming true, and I just can't, what can this mean? And then it turned out to be fine, this new way, which was such a good reminder. First of all, I'm not special. This happens to people all the time. Yeah, everybody has their heartbreaks. And also, when this door slammed in my face, I realized there were a lot of people helping me see that there's a window over here.
Yeah.
There's another way to go. So I never thought I would say this at the time, but I am glad it turned out this way. I learned a lot, and it was really better. It was something better in the long run.
So, which brings me to the point, why do people look for something better? Why are they not satisfied with what they have right in front of them? Because when you look at the couple, Ruth and David, they were like the perfect, if there could be a perfect couple in the very beginning, they were like the perfect couple. I mean, yeah, she was traveling some, but they were always, like, spent their couple time together, and they did things together. And then all of a sudden you throw in all the other characters that come in conflict with their lives, and you're like, wait a second, what happened to that couple?
Yeah, what happened to them was a lot of both internal and external pressure. I mean, their pressure to have a child would put a lot of stress on them, added a lot of sadness to the marriage because that wasn't working out. David is the snowplow driver, was racked with guilt because he felt that he could have done something to save his friend. It might not have been rational, but he concocted this thing that he was partly at fault. So he kept looking for a way to address that. And because he was so obsessed with that, his thinking got wacky. He wasn't looking at it correctly. And I think, I don't know, that's such a good question. Why are we always looking for something better? And why don't we identify the something better that's sitting right in front of us, available? I don't know. There is something about human nature that makes us always think we want the other guy's thing, or we want the next prize, or the next house, or the next whatever it is. I think it takes real maturity and a compassion and time probably to understand that often what's better, we're already holding in our hands.
For sure. So when did you decide on the title Something Better? Was that something that was already on the top of your head, or was it as you were writing the story, you're like, this is the title?
I initially had a different title for it. It was called, I think my original title was Grasp of Grace. And then I started, because that's, appropriate too. I started looking into that title. Well, there were about 15 books, something like that, or really close to that. That's not going to work. And then I was thinking, this book is about choosing something better that may not look like somebody else's choice of what's better. And they each had to discern for themselves what is the better thing. And so that stuck after, I came up with that. I liked it. And both times the publishers also liked it. So that's what it is.
Yeah. When you just hit the nail on the head when you said that, people are grasping for something better, but what might be better for one person may not be better for the other person. And the perception is out there where this should be better for you, but in reality, it's not going to be better for you. So I love the fact that you just hit that nail on the head.
Well, and that's why, you asked me earlier why I ended it the way I ended it. Exactly for that reason, because what Ruth has decided is her something better, which I think if we really think about it, we kind of have a pretty good hint for what that is. What
Mhm.
Ruth has decided is her something better might not be what a lot of other people have chosen for their something better. And in fact, I had an interview with someone one time who said, I'm just so mad at you because I don't like what Ruth chose for her something better.
Yeah, but you never know until you walk in somebody's shoes what decisions they're going to make because
You-
it's a personal choice.
It is a personal choice. And, what they perceive and what they need is hard for us to imagine. And it's hard to be in somebody else's marriage. I tried to get in the middle of this marriage because, it's a made up marriage. So I could kind of make it be what it needed to be. But in the circumstance I told you about earlier, where there was forgiveness, it was forgiveness from infidelity in a marriage. And they're still together like 20 years later. And I often have thought, what did they have? How did they do that? What made it possible for them to not just survive that, with like gritted teeth, well, I promised and I'm staying no matter what, but really come out on the other side in a better place. And I don't know, I can only imagine.
Yeah, because you like I said, you don't know until you walk in somebody's shoes. But what made you decide to write about forgiveness though? Because that's a huge, like you said, you knew you couldn't write an essay about it. You knew it's a huge topic. Everybody's idea of forgiveness is different.
It is. I guess you could say I kind of became obsessed with it. Did because I don't know if it would have happened the way it did if I wasn't witnessing these things at the same time. But this was so extraordinary, I thought, because it was so magnanimous and almost supernatural what happened with the forgiveness people. And then in my own family, I just couldn't believe that it was going to end the way it ended. I kept thinking, this can't be, but it was. And so then I just kept thinking about myself and about other people. How about you, Diane? How far could you go? How deep could you dig? What would you forgive? What do you think you've done that would require extraordinary grace for someone to forgive you? And then, if we're honest, we realize every day we're alive, we inadvertently do things to hurt other people. And we have to hope that they'll forgive us and, be grateful that we know we're forgiven. So that's quite the blessing.
Did you know when you were writing this book, it was going to have such a deep impact on forgiveness and on your, as you can tell by you writing it, it had a deep impact on existential thoughts about what you were thought forgiveness was and how your views changed a little bit once you were doing all this research. Did you ever think it was going to have that impact?
No, I didn't. I just thought let's tell a story where forgiveness is at the middle of it. And let's look at it from a lot of different angles and see how that turns out. Because I mean, I had a general idea of the plot when I first started to write the book, and I knew that I wanted the theme to be forgiveness. But the main act in the middle of the book, I didn't really want to be in the book for for a long time. I was thinking, no, we'll just dance around that. No, we'll just kind of, float right past that. We're not going to have that in the middle of the book. But both of the participants in that incident as characters kept pushing me, saying, yeah, if this is going to have a punch, you need to tell what we did. We're not proud of it, but we did it and you need to tell. So I finally, just kind of the day I had, like a blank space in the manuscript where I couldn't decide what was going to go there. And then one day I just decided, okay, I'm writing it, I'm putting it in, and let the chips fall where they may. And then after I had done it, I knew it was kind of risky, but it felt true to the story to me to do it that way.
You're not the first writer I've heard saying that they wanted something to go one way, but their characters were leading them another way. So can you talk about how that impacted you? Because I hear a lot of writers say, yeah, I was writing this story and then all of a sudden the way I wanted it to turn out was not the way it turned out.
No, it's crazy. And when I used to hear authors say that, I would kind of secretly think, well, that sounds kind of loony to me. You are making up these people. Why don't you just push them around and tell them where you want them to go? But what happened for me anyway was once I worked with them for long enough, I did invent them, but once I was with them long enough, they became so real to me that they lived with me. They lived in my head. I'm telling you, there would have been days if I would have walked in the grocery store and Ruth would have been standing there, I would have struck up a conversation with her because she seemed so real. So once they became, I mean, this is a strange thing. Once, obviously, they're in my imagination, they're in my head, but once they also seem to exist outside myself, then they did have a say in how things were going.
Now, because they existed on paper, not just in your head. It was
Yeah.
like once I know you probably plotted out or kind of figured out how you wanted the story to go. And you did it do a complete 180 once you put that incident in? Like,
No,
ooh,
no, it just became a lot more shocking, I guess. I mean, I kind of knew it was headed in that direction from the beginning, but I wasn't sure I could commit to it because it was, like I said, it was kind of risky and it was kind of hard for me to write. But the general plot, the general plot followed the general plot. And certain characters had certain traits that showed up that I wasn't expecting, but that kind of made them more fun to me. Like, let's see, let me think of an example. Like Theo, Annabeth's running friend that she met, he was just going to be a plug person. He was just going to be, I need somebody else her age in here. I'm going to put this kid in here. And then I started liking him so much. I kept giving him more paper time.
yep, I can see that because I really like Theo too. I felt like she needed someone that could she could talk to that was her own age that could kind of understand what she was going not through, not completely understand, but understand a little bit what she was going through. And I really like the fact that you gave her a friend of a different gender because you have a different perspective than if it was a friend of the same gender, if it was a female. I think the male perspective came in a little bit too for that.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Thank you. I tried to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said you wrote this and you hid it in a file. You read it over 10 years, hid it in a file, beat recipes. You said you gave it to a friend and gave it to your daughter to read. What did they do when you handed it to them to read and said, read this? And were they shocked? Were they surprised that you were like, you wrote a book? What the heck? Why didn't you tell us? Or
Well, I
anything?
had sneaked in a few hints along the way. I said, like to my daughter, I said, sometime I'm kind of writing this novel, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to finish it. So she knew it was kind of happening. And my friend, who also was a writer, she's a very take charge person. Once I finally said to her, I said, well, I think I might have a draft of a novel. I'm not quite sure. She just was all over it. She said, you have to finish it. This is your calling. You have to do this. And just kind of bugged me to finish it. So I gave her, it was literally off the printer, typewriter paper with printer, and it was stapled together. So I gave it to her and said, do you mind? And of course, she was all excited. So she told me that she took my mess of papers stapled together and a current, very popular book with her on her vacation. And when she came back, she said, I had both books on my nightstand the first night of the vacation. I picked yours up and I didn't even think about picking up the other one until I finished reading yours. So
That was a great compliment.
that was a great compliment. That was a great compliment. It needed work. Of course, it was a
Yeah.
draft. And I emailed it to my daughter, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I did. And when she finished reading it, she called me on the phone and she was kind of crying. She said, Mommy, your book is beautiful. So I know.
That is so sweet. What did it feel when you first got it and you were holding it in your hands and you got the copy and you were looking at it? Because I know how I felt when I just wrote a short chapter in a collaborative book, but I know how it felt when I actually saw my words in print and in a book. How did it feel?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was absolutely blown away. They sent me a box of advanced reader copies, to share with others. And oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. It was a total pinch me moment. This has really happened. This has happened. This is my book. This cover that we looked at in mock-ups is on a book now. The nice things people said about it is on a book now. And I opened it up and started reading the words, and it was unreal, honestly. It seemed like something I had imagined for so long, but then when it actually happened, it didn't quite feel real.
So, what did you learn through this journey of writing the book?
Mm.
10-year journey, because I mean, it's a 10-year journey. And then you had all this research about forgiveness as well.
So many things. So many things. I learned, I guess, about forgiveness that, as you were saying a minute ago, it looks very different for different people. There's no one size fits all. And there's no one, you can't write out a prescription for how to forgive somebody. Every situation is different. So I learned to have a different perspective on the time that it might take to forgive someone, or that you might have to do it over and over again. And I hadn't really anticipated that. And I learned about myself that my tendency to want to do everything perfectly is not a good trait. You can tell yourself that being very careful and demanding and hard on yourself is a good thing, but it only is up to a point. When you pass the point so that it keeps you in place and becomes a source of fear, then that's not good. So I started really working on letting things be imperfect. That's not easy, but it's also, there's no other way, You can't be perfect. Nobody can be perfect. Nothing can be perfect.
And in a way, being imperfect is a way of forgiving yourself too.
Yes, exactly.
Because I think a lot of people, they're willing to forgive everybody else for things that may have happened, but they're not willing to forgive themselves for things that they've done that maybe in their past, or things that, are something they might have said, or something, how they feel or anything, and they beat themselves up about forgiveness.
Absolutely. I mean, I have certain things that I never intend to hurt people, but I have certain things I look back on and think, oh, that was not good what you did or said or whatever. And, it can be from decades ago, and it'll still pop up and I'll think, it's awful, but I can't do anything about it now. I just can make sure I don't do something like that again, and hope and pray that the person I've hurt is no longer hurting from my mistakes.
And you learn from them. So next time when the situation does arise, that you can learn and maybe not take the same route.
Maybe not take the same route. Exactly. Maybe maybe do what my mom always said. Take a deep breath, count to 10 before you do or say anything.
I know. I was brought up in a household where we raged and regret. Like, we would anger out and then we would regret it later. And when I turned 50, I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't do that. I have to sit on something, pray about it, and then if I feel called to say something, I say it in such a manner that it's not in the heat of the moment where, anger boils over, and that forgiveness is hard to come by when you're raging and regretting.
Was that a difficult change for you to make?
It took a while, but I became a better person because of that. There are still like triggers in my family. Like, I only have one sister alive left, and the rest of my family is gone that I grew up with. But she still wants to try to trigger me. But I've learned, I'm like, I'm not playing that game anymore. I can't do this. So I either don't respond, or I wait and respond a couple of days later, because I know that's going to trigger me and it's going to make me feel bad because I've raged and regretted. And I'm like, I'm tired of feeling bad about the way I feel.
Yeah, and you've relinquished, what I find in that kind of situation is you've actually given control to the other person for how you are going to feel and how you are going to react. But when you do what you've talked about, waiting and responding later, you've taken back the control.
Yep. And it's free, but also it's hard to do. It's very hard to do, especially when you're in that habit where, that's why I see so many redeeming qualities with your characters, because they're all imperfect people. They have all had horrible things. Annabeth had a horrible thing happen to her. You look and she could be so bitter. But she knew what happened afterwards later on. I can't give away. She knew she had to remove herself from that situation.
She did. And it took a lot of strength for her. That was a lot of growth on her part, because that was not how she was at the beginning of the book. She was a different kind of person. So that took a lot of strength on her part. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said you're writing another book. What are you
Yeah.
writing currently?
I am writing another book. I'm discovering, talk about learning things about yourself. I'm discovering that apparently forgiveness is my theory of everything, because for this book also also involves forgiveness. This is a totally different situation with different characters. My main character is a 68-year-old widow, and she has befriended a young man who's a, let's see, he's a single father, and she can't quite sort him out. He has quite a past, and as the book goes on, we're going to find out about his past. And she has her own family, so they're an unlikely pairing, but they're going to become very close as the book goes on, and it involves forgiveness and addiction and family issues, and also some funny bits, because otherwise if it's all so heavy, we'll just, we just won't be able to take it.
That's what I liked is, you talk about forgiveness in this book, but it's not heavy, heavy, heavy. It's like very like I couldn't put it down once I started reading it. I was like,
Oh.
okay, I've got to go do something else. And then when I read the end, I'm not going to start with the end again, but I was like, really? But I was like, this is so entertaining, and you were able to get your point across without like cramming it down the reader's throat. You have to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice. You can't sit there and judge somebody for what they forgive when you never know if that situation is going to happen to you, or if that situation has never happened to you. You can't judge people for how they
That
feel about forgiveness.
I really appreciate your saying that, because that was very important to me. And even though some of the characters do some really not so cool things, and some of them you do kind of want to sock in the mouth sometimes, I tried to have, and I had a lot of empathy for every one of them. They're flawed, they made mistakes, they sometimes they knew they were making a mistake when they made their mistake, but none of them were evil, none of them were bad people. They're human beings, making their way in the world, messing up just like everybody does. And I couldn't berate them. I couldn't judge them as unworthy of forgiveness for anything they did, because then who am I to make that choice?
Yeah, because we never know until we're in that same situation. And circumstances are different too. We may be in the same situation, but it may be a different circumstance. It may be something totally, one little thing that could be totally different from what somebody else has gone through. And we will never know. We never
No,
know.
we never know. We never know. We never know what makes a person who they are and what makes them respond the way they do. So we have to try to extend that grace, even when it looks impossible, even when from the outside you're thinking, what on earth? How could that be? You don't know.
So, do you think that second book that you're writing now, because you did so much research on forgiveness, that it's still in your brain, that's the reason why you were doing forgiveness for the second book?
I think it's still in my brain, and I think it is always really important. And you really have to forgive. We all have to forgive over and over and over again. Sometimes different people, sometimes the same people. So I think it's really an important part of being a human being, is learning how to forgive and understanding forgiveness. And because this book has addiction issues, I think for people who are recovering addicts, or people who have had addicts in their family, um, there's a lot of forgiveness, even when you come out on the other side and, things are much better. That's a very painful situation, and it takes a lot of forgiveness. It's not like in the movies, where somebody says one day, I'm clean. Well, maybe. We hope so. And what about all those years before that? It's complicated. But again, I want to try to come at that issue from a perspective of empathy as well, and really try to grant these people the space to just be humans.
Yeah, for sure. Our time is almost up. Is there one last little thing that either we talked about that you want to reiterate, or something we didn't talk about that you want to share?
I guess what I would like to share with readers is there's a lot of hope in this book. There's a lot of hope because the people in it, as we just said, are imperfect, and they learn to find a way to accept their own imperfections and the imperfections of the people around them who've hurt them. But my main takeaway from the book is that with forgiveness, there's always hope. You can always get to a better place, something better.
Yeah, for sure. Something better. Now tell people where they can find you. I've got your Amazon link up and I will put it in the show notes as well where you can buy something better because I feel like everybody has Amazon. I mean, I could put Barnes and Noble, because I feel like we're in that technology based world that people want to instantly grab something and and read it.
Well, for sure. Absolutely. And that's the way it is. So yes, on Amazon, Shop, Barnes and Noble, all the places. My website is very simple. It's just dianneparrish.com. Thank you. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Dianne Parrish Author. There you go. And we post pretty regularly. I will say I also have a newsletter. If anybody wants to sign up, you can get to that through my website. I send out a monthly newsletter. Look at you. The newsletter has a little essay from me on whatever happens to be grabbing my attention. And then I usually recommend 2 or 3 books that people have recommended to me and I read. So that's fun. Yeah, and then once a month, I write a column for booktrib.com. It's called Lit Garden. And in on that column, I highlight 4 or 5 books that have something in common and, make recommendations. So a lot of writing about reading.
Oh, I love that. And thank you so much, Diane, for coming on and for writing something better. Hopefully sequel, maybe, but I cannot wait.
You'll have to, you know what? The thing about the sequel is I need a title. So if you have an idea for a title for me, send it to me.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've already got my brain going on that.
Okay, good.
But I cannot wait to read the second book. Do you think it's going to take you 10 years to
Oh,
write?
please, no. I don't know if I have 10 years. No, it will not take 10 years. I promise.
Because you have the confidence now that your book is published and because we all doubt ourselves. Huge doubt for ourselves.
Yeah. I still have self-doubts, but now I've done a book, so I know a lot more about how to do a book, and that will shorten the time for sure.
So whenever you write the second book coming out, not the sequel, but the one that you're writing currently, I would love for you to come back on and I would love to read the second one as well. If you need a beta reader or anybody, let me know because I think your writing style is so incredible. The fact that you take such a heavy topic like forgiveness, make it entertaining but also informing. And that's what I love about fiction is when you read a book that has a heavy topic, but yet you're learning something from it, you're being entertained by it, and it's not so, oh my gosh, I cannot pick up this book. It's like a snooze fest, or it's way too dark and dense. Like you said, the one you're writing on now, you're gonna have some light moments in it because the topics are very dark and dense topics.
Yes, my 68-year-old widow is a wisecracker. She's funny.
I can't wait to hear that one. So thank you, Diane, for coming on and for writing something better. And guys, you can pick it up, like I said, on Amazon. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. It was so much fun to talk with you. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
I did too. I laughed so much on this conversation.
Yeah, me too. It was really fun.
Yeah. So guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere you can find Diane as well as to find something better. And just guys, quit looking for something better because it's right there in front of your face. You just got to quit looking for something better because something better is right there in front of you, basically.
Palm of your hand.
Yep. So until next time, guys, bye.